So you want to know about the band-resisted kettlebell swing? Well, the how is easy. The why, now that's where things get interesting. So now that you know how to properly apply a resistance band to a kettlebell, let's talk about why you might choose to include this movement in a training program. Normally with a kettlebell swing, your hip extension happens so fast and so powerfully that the majority of that kettlebell swing doesn't require you to recruit much muscle mass. You've recruited as much as you need when the kettlebell is in that loaded position between your legs. And the vast majority of the rest of that swing is mainly taken over by the speed you've given that weight. So it's got momentum. But with the resistance band, you've got to overcome accumulated resistance. Now, if you think about why that might be important, often in something like a deadlift or a box jump, you need to be able to exert your maximum force as fast as possible. If you don't do it quickly, very often, you're not going to reach that height of the box jump, and you're not going to be able to give the weight, let's say you're using a deadlift as an example here, you're not going to be able to give that barbell enough force to leave the floor. And quite often people breaking the floor is a sticking point. So the band-resisted kettlebell swing doesn't only teach you to exert more speed and more force throughout the entire movement, but it also teaches your neurology in terms of how to recruit as much muscle fiber as possible as early in the movement as possible. Now that's a really important point, because very often with something like a deadlift or a maximum box jump, max height box jump, it's not necessarily that you're unable to lift the weight or make the height. It's that you're unable to exert the necessary force and the necessary time. So something like a band-resisted kettlebell swing is going to train your neurology and help you develop the muscle mass to create hip extension at the right force and speed to continue marching towards those goals. Now those are just two off-the-cuff goals. But you can see how speed development has a huge crossover to a multitude of different sports and a huge number of different areas. Whether you're sprinting or doing a martial art, throwing a kick, whether that's in football or again in a martial art, or if you're doing something like a traditional lift, like a power lift or Olympic lift. Your speed of force production is really important. So the resistance band is going to begin to teach that in the right way. And the other part of it that I love is that if you don't maintain tension in your body the whole way up through that swing, you're not going to complete the swing. So often with a kettlebell, people end up being lazy because they've exerted all the force they've needed at the beginning of the swing, and the rest of that swing is lazy. There's no thought to it, and there's no tension through their body for the rest of that swing. They're not using their breath to engage trunk tension. They're not trying to bend the handle to engage their lats. There's no thought about the rest of that swing. So if you do this with a resistance band, and I encourage you to do this with a light resistance band to start off with, you will learn better technique for your swing, and the crossover of how a kettlebell swing affects your major lifts will be so much greater. So you know how to apply the band, and you know why you might choose to use it. Now, realistically, you need a pretty heavy band to make this, a pretty heavy band and a pretty heavy bell, to be honest, to make this the optimal exercise possible. And as a result, you're going to stick to those rep ranges that we know to make sense. If you're building speed, we're looking at sort of 1 to 5. If you're looking at power, it's sort of 1 to 6. If we're looking to create hypertrophy and endurance in those muscles, Then we're going to start to climb up through the reps a little higher. But what I encourage most people to do when they're learning this movement is to go through 2 reps at a time. One where you pull from the floor, the second rep as you catch with your hips and go straight into that second rep, back down to the floor. So you're learning to exert that force and that speed from the floor and through the stretch shortening cycle of catching the kettlebell as it comes down from that first swing. That's enough from me. I hope this has been helpful because there's a lot of people doing band resisted swings for a super high volume with no real understanding of why or how to use it, and I often see that band applied to the kettlebell wrong. So there's a simple explanation of how to apply the band and why you might choose to use the exercise. If this has been at all helpful, please share it, please subscribe because it costs you nothing and it helps me a ton. I really appreciate you watching the video. Thanks a lot. Leave a comment below if you know what you want to see next. See you soon.